Hi, my name is Natalie Clark, and I did article number 6 titled Different Service Delivery Models for Different Communication Disorders, Language, Speech, and Hearing Services in Schools. I don't know, it was a mouthful, so I decided to make it more dramatic. There you go. This article was about a thing called the pull-out method. No, get your mind out of the gutter. The pull-out method in schools, the pull-out service delivery model, whatever. Still not a great term, in my opinion. But it's basically where kids get pulled out of class and get little intervention sessions twice a week, maybe at most, for like 30 minutes. Some potential benefits are for kids with stuttering and articulation and voice disorders. This is when kids are trying to learn the difficult sounds that they are not able to produce and learn specific techniques so they can produce a syllable or words depending on what's going on. And then they can develop also the necessary awareness of harmful and healthy techniques. However, there are many drawbacks to this. The big one, and why it's a big drawback, is because kids with language disorders, that's a whole nother story and a whole nother ballgame. Because language, rather than like specific sounds and words, a different model would be needed. Why? Because this eventually will link to the success in academics, social interactions, and eventually the child's job that they're going to have someday. Those are important things to live, or at least, knowledge is power. Research shows that if kindergartners lag behind their typical developing peers, it can lead to a few things that aren't so great in life if they're not, being given the proper intervention. It can lead to not that great of academics, weaker social competence, being able to have these interactions with people around them, and higher rates of rule-breaking behaviors because they're not able to express in the way that is very healthy, aka words, because if they're not able to articulate it, then how are they supposed to defend themselves? Two things that clinicians need to be taking into consideration with this model is that they need to be able to not only implement it, but with frequency and intensity in several different environments too. Because if they aren't able to do it in just one place, then how are they supposed to do it in another? And it's basically because there's some really sad consequences that can happen with communication disorders if these aren't treated. Like, some kids who end up in juvie and they have like language and literacy disorders, they aren't able to defend themselves. How sad is that? Like, they literally just like stay in there because they aren't able to say, no, I did not do that. And it can lead to a lower paying job later, or not even being able to finish high school, or potentially not even attending college. Because that's what college is a bunch of reading and writing and saying things and discussing and all these words, but if you're not able to feel comfortable with doing things or have the right techniques or interventions, throughout the rest of your life, then how are you supposed to be able to do these things? I think the barriers for clinicians to providing these services to the children in school, there's a high caseload. There's not many SLPs in each school district. In fact, they're kind of short. Like, 1 to 60 sometimes? That's so many kids. I also think that not being able to go to the homes of these kids to know the environment that they, interact with every day, and where the disorder is occurring, and how to implement little things here and there to intervene and be a positive treatment plan. But also, it's really hard to meet these standards if you don't have a close relationship with their teacher or the faculty around them. So that way they can hold each other responsible, or, implement these like small little things so that way they can be able to articulate the things that they need to. SLPs also need to understand that once they get to like 3rd grade, this is when the text gets smaller and there's hardly any pictures anymore. A lot more rigor happens in 3rd grade, which I've never understood myself as a person who has a learning disorder, because it just makes it so much more strenuous for everybody involved. I also think some barriers are that you're not going to reach every kid. Some kids just won't cooperate for whatever reason, and having the least amount of distractions is very difficult. And having a school which half the time probably won't have a separate room all the time for these interventions, and half the time, if you're wanting to meet all of these standards for implementing frequent and intense care for each of these children, most of the time it won't happen because you have so many of them. But yeah, and that's what I learned about this article. Hope you enjoyed.